Hi everyone, welcome to the Dave's World YouTube channel. So I had a lot of people contact me because they wanted the parts that I was making for Gen 1 and Gen 2 Cruzes, so I decided to start a website called supercruzes.com. Hi everyone, welcome to Dave's World. I appreciate you checking this video out. So everybody knows me as the guy that builds cruise parts. When I first started my YouTube channel, really what I was doing was just making horsepower out of Cruze missile. This is my car Cruze missile. It's very well known in the cruise community. It has a lot of really cool modifications like custom hood struts that I came out with, custom intercooler systems that you can get them pretty much any way you want. PCV reroute, a bunch of other things. There's a lot of stuff. Big turbos, things like that. But back in 2020, 2021, I did things like dual exhaust, ported intake manifold, and a few other things, and I lost the footage. So one of the reasons this car has extra power is because I was porting my own intake manifolds. Now, as of this year, I have an official company called Supercruzes. So that's why you see in every one of my videos, it starts off with me telling people, hey, I own Supercruzes. So what I started offering is the ported intake manifold. So that's what these are. I want to show you that this is pretty much an OEM intake manifold, where you can see the ports are really small and it's a really choked down intake. And then this is a ported one that I'm working on, where you can physically see the different stages of porting. So this is basically a regular port. This is one that's almost finished and smoothed up. This is one that I'm in the middle. Like, basically, this is different stages. So this is me starting to port it. This is the next level of getting it larger. This is me sort of finishing it, and that's non-touched. So what's the reason for this video? Basically, the more air you get into an engine and the more air you get out of an engine, the more power an engine makes. The faster it revs, the more power it produces, and the happier the engine feels. The longer you make a runner and the larger you make the ports on an intake, the more horsepower the engine will make, and the longer runners will generate more torque, and you'll get more horsepower through the RPM range. So let me show you what the reason for the video is now. On a factory intake, you have some really small ports. So you can get intake spacers for these smaller ports, but if you have a ported intake, the intake spacers that help produce power will only work on a factory intake manifold. So if you have a factory intake manifold and ported spacers, the additional runner length will make power, but the problem is if you go put a ported intake manifold on a car, now your tiny spacers have to be ported out, and it's a huge pain in the butt. Because porting the aluminum is very hard to do, especially if you don't have the tooling. So I came out with these ported spacers. So you see how large this runner is. If you put my ported spacer on, you can pretty much see here how much smaller the OEM port is versus the larger port on the ported spacer. But if you look here where everything is ported, it's port matched. So the intake manifold and the spacer is port matched evenly. So now there's no more restriction, because if you go put an intake spacer that's meant for a factory intake on a ported intake, all you're doing is restricting down the intake, and it's kind of a pointless mod. Now, just for demonstration purposes, let me show you the throttle body port. This isn't finished being cleaned up, but it's almost done. So here's the Supercruzes throttle spacer, and you can see again here, you could see how much smaller the diameter of the OEM intake manifold is with the ported spacer. But when you put the spacer onto my ported intake, you can see that the ports are matched. So those matched ports allow, basically the runner length adds torque and horsepower, and then the diameter allows more airflow and boost to be able to go through. Plus I took out some restrictions when I ported it. These are a really cool product. I can customize them. So this one I have set up for basically meth injection, nitrous, or if you want to run a boost gauge. You can use this, or have another adapter for the back of the intake manifold. So if you just want to do a ported intake but you don't want the spacers, I have a different adapter to hook a boost gauge up. And then also on these ported spacers, I could actually do direct nitrous ports. So if you want to port at each runner and you want to run direct port nitrous, where you could put 4 injectors in this thing, I could set that up as well. So if you want some really cool stuff made for your car, just let me know. So the ported spacers and the ported intake manifolds are live on the website. You just go into the ported intake manifold section and you can get these spacers. I might separate them for just spacers alone. If you already have a ported intake, you just pick these up. It'll probably be in the same product listing. So just go to supercruzes.com and you can get these for the Malibu, the Equinox, and the Gen 2 Cruze. And actually the Vanderhall Caramel, I believe, has the same engine, or it might have the 1.5. There is a Vanderhole with a 1.5, so it should fit that as well. Though I don't think the throttle body spacer will fit, but the intake manifold spacer will. On top of that, I do have an aluminum intake that's coming out in the future. I don't think anybody in the Cruze community is going to want it because it's a $900 intake, and it's going to basically be built with the runners into it. So it'll be a longer intake with larger holes. And then, that way when you get a step further and you get some ported heads on your car, you can make even more power. So like I said, any engine on the planet that's making power, the higher horsepower cars always have a bigger intake, ported stuff, larger valves, you name it, and that's the way you get power. So larger is better. So on these, I have a lot of people reporting back that they feel a lot more power right away. They feel more power through the RPM range. And some people have even had them on their cars while they're dynoed. So these are a really cool product. I can't wait for more people to get them. And don't forget to check them out at supercruzes.com. Talk to you later, everybody.